So, for all the talk of Georgia's struggle on offense in 2024, did you know that Georgia just completed its worst defensive season in terms of total defense under Kirby Smart ever? They finished 30th. There's only been a couple of times, there's only been 4 times in Kirby's time at Georgia, less than half the time, that they've not finished in the top 10. They finished 30th. This is the lowest by almost double of any other year that Kirby's been there. So I want to talk about that because if that doesn't get better, for Georgia, their offense is going to have to explode. And for all of the discussion of the troubles of the offense and all this, that, and the other, which are not, made up, they are a real thing. Finishing 30th for Georgia, that's just hard to really comprehend. I mean, like Jeremy Pruitt's not the defensive coordinator anymore. Neither is Kevin Ramsey, I guess, for those of you who are old enough, for those of you who celebrate. So this is going to be something that Georgia's going to really have to get better at. And they happen to have a very good coach in Kirby Smart who knows what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. But just far too many yards, far too many points in the grand scheme of things. And I'm just going to go through what they went through, and then I'm going to talk about what it means moving forward. Because this Georgia team, in terms of who they've got and so forth, first of all, they're not going to be playing the schedule that they did a season ago. You go through the first 3 games of the season, and Georgia gave up 18 points. So there they are. At the beginning of the season, it looked like they were in really good shape, and then they gave up 41 to Alabama. They gave up 31 to State. They gave up 20 to Florida, a team that was playing its third-string quarterback that day. They gave up 28 to Ole Miss. They gave up a pretty good defensive effort against Tennessee, only giving up 17, but then 42 to Tech. And then, of course, 23 to Notre Dame. So it was not so much the scoring, as you recall, as it was the yardage. Now, against Ole Miss and Alabama very specifically, and to some degree Mississippi State and Georgia Tech, those teams moved the ball pretty consistently against Georgia. Like Notre Dame, they hardly moved the ball at all against Georgia. As you recall, they scored a touchdown from, I think, the 15-yard line and in. They scored on a non-offensive touchdown, which was the kickoff return. So 14 of their 23 points came pretty easily, or with the defense not even on the field. That's how you lose football games. So how does this get better? It doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, just because you pose the question doesn't mean that it will get better. That's the important part about all these things. Just because people want something to get better, just because people think something will get better, does not necessarily mean that it will. I will say that this season at Georgia, generally speaking, in 24, they just had way too many injuries globally. Whether it was on the offensive side of the ball with Carson Beck, ETN, Tate Ratledge, you had Jared Wilson missing games. I mean, it just was too much of that for too long. On the defensive side of the ball, they had the same problem, very specifically with Mikael Williams. You had Ismail Munden missing. I don't know about the bulk of the season, but a lot of the season. Just way too many guys missing too many games, too much. Xavier McLeod was out. You had the defensive line that was really just, trying to get it done. I remember, I think it was a Kentucky game where Kirby was talking about how banged up they were on the defensive line, and they needed guys to play, and they did. Or it was the Texas game. I can't remember. It was a game where the defense really kind of was gritty and showed up. And that's the other thing, too. This defense at times, whether it was the Florida game to some degree, certainly both Texas games and, games against Clemson, games against Kentucky, games like that. And I would say, honestly, the game against Notre Dame, for the most part, just showed how good this defense could be. The difference for Georgia in 24 and what they better hope changes in 25 was there was not a lot of consistency on either side of the ball. Now, they won 11 games, right? They won 10 games in the regular season, and then they won the SEC championship game. So you're going 11-3, and a lot of people are, understandably kind of, But if you are more consistent on both sides of the ball, you're probably winning against Alabama, first of all, and Notre Dame. I mean, both those games were not out of reach for Georgia. I think against Ole Miss, they just lost that game. I mean, it's just kind of the same way that Tennessee lost to Georgia. It's just, just kind of lost that game. You can't, I don't know that you can really. I can't really advocate for that for the Alabama game and the Notre Dame game, and but in both those cases, I don't know if you don't play those games again, you don't get outcomes that are different. But that's not how it works. I mean, you could have said the same thing about the Tech game, the Kentucky game. There were a lot of games where Georgia pushed out to wins. Clemson, Tennessee, Texas. Those were all games where Georgia Texas in the second half, I should say, the second game. So back to the original point, which is, you're getting your 30th in total defense. That's just not good enough. That's just not good enough if you're wanting to be the Georgia that everybody that I'm aware of is used to. They're used to shut down defenses. That didn't really happen this season. I mean, you had multiple games. It wasn't all the time, but you had multiple games of allowing over 40 points. That's not happened a lot at Georgia over the years. I mean, you look at 2023, they had, I think it was one game. Yeah, they had, no, they didn't have any games over 30. The most that in 2023 that Georgia allowed was 27 points against Alabama. You can win a lot of games if you're only giving up 27. Rarely, like once. Like they gave up over 20 to UAB, Mizzou, Tech, and Alabama. 4 games in their 23 season, they gave up over 20 points, not 40. In 2022, giving up over 20, Kent State, Missouri, LSU, Ohio State. Over 20 in 2024, that happened against Alabama, Mississippi State, over 20. Ole Miss, Massachusetts, Tech, and then Notre Dame 6 times. So I understand total defense is not scoring defense. I do understand that. But at the same time, it's a global thing. You got to pick one of the two. And, total defense is perfectly adequate. Both those things are very good judgers of, is this defense good? And I think Georgia's defense was really good, to be honest with you, but it was not consistently really good. It was really good at times. Texas, Notre Dame, who had a very limited offense, just be honest here. Texas, Notre Dame, Tennessee, they were not great against Tech. They were not great against Alabama. It was bad against Alabama. It was not good against Tech. I don't know if it was bad, but it wasn't good. So that's the thing that I'd be, curious about watching. Now, the thing about it is this 25 season is, we won't really know a lot. I mean, the first few weeks. I mean, you play Marshall, who is switching their head coach. Then you play Austin Peay, who, is a 1AA. And you go to Tennessee. And, with Tennessee in 2025, it was in 2024, Tennessee, you knew sort of quickly what was going to happen because they played NC State week 2. Well, for the Vols this year in week 1, they're going to play Syracuse at the Dome. So the day before Carolina plays Virginia Tech, Syracuse and Tennessee will play at the Dome. I think I can't expect Syracuse to win that game. I would not be shocked if they won that game, but I cannot expect Syracuse to win that game. But you will get some, you will see into the future a little bit with Tennessee. Tennessee's problem, generally speaking, is much like several of these. Yeah, Ole Miss, Tennessee, they're both. There's a lot of sort of jostling, I guess you'd say. They're not supposed to be as good in 2025 as they were in 2024, and Georgia handled Tennessee obviously, and then the loss to Ole Miss was just I don't even know what to say about that game. I mean, it was not a good look for Georgia, but they just got beat. I mean, it wasn't like there was any sort of magic. It wasn't a bunch of turnovers like with Notre Dame. It was just they just lost, and they just got beat by a team that was better than them that day. Were they better than them during the season? No, but that's not how it works. You have to do what you're supposed to do when you're right in that moment. And part of that in 2025 is going to be getting better defensively. Like, Georgia won the league. They were not great offensively. Georgia won the league. They were not great defensively. Georgia won the league. Special teams, they were pretty good. They were okay. Punting, great. Place kicking, great. They were really good at those things. But the consistency was not there for this team in 2024. 2025, let's just see what happens. Thanks for watching.